spelled your name correctly. That's always a good sign. All right. And then I don't know if it pops up for you, but there'll be something that says live on YouTube.
Yeah, I saw that.
All right.
How about that?
And so we'll make sure that our volume's down. Okay. And so now then I will have us go, we'll open up the webinar to allow in.
Excellent.
All right. And so I'm going to just talk for a second. Welcome everybody on YouTube, and in a moment we'll be loading this link to Facebook. So if you have people waiting on Facebook, don't worry, we will get this link there. But good morning. Thank you for joining us for day 4 actually of the National Biodiversity Teach-In. And today we have Patrick. This morning we have Patrick McPartlan. Now Patrick he's going to tell you about himself, but he is one of our scientist partners who helps the U46 science office often, and so we'll ask him advice. His whole office, the Soil and Water Conservation District. If you don't know what a Soil and Water Conservation District is, you should learn what those are. They're very important offices. With very few exceptions, every county has one. And the whole role of a Soil and Water Conservation District office is to support water and soil conservation. And that might not seem really important, but when you learn the history of this office, and when you really think about soil and water, what it does for us as humans, it's a really important office. And Patrick has is going to show you guys one of the very cool tools that they use. And we're so excited to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Talking now, and I'm going to let Patrick do the talking.
Excellent. Okay. So my topic today is going to be on geography, and I'm going to dip into geographical information systems and what my work does, how we use it, and let me give you the full screen there. And so, like Deb said, my name is Patrick McPartlan. I'm the resource conservationist over at Kane-DuPage Soil Water Conservation District. If you're not familiar with county boundaries, I have this little graphic right here to indicate, or this map I created that indicates where we are. So if you look to the west here, this would be Chicago, Lake Michigan, and then you slowly have that urban sprawl metropolitan area, and then that dips into a more rural location. So I think at our district, as Deb mentioned, most counties have, or all the counties have, a soil water conservation district. We have a nice opportunity here to have a nice mix of farmland, urban, and plenty of tree coverage and a variety of things. So a little bit about the presentation. The next slide, I'll dip into the applicable next generation standards related to this. I was asked to talk a little bit more about me and how I, like, kind of my path in order to get where I am today. And I'll talk about geography, the topic at hand. And with that, naturally comes cartography, the science of map making. And then I'll go into geographical information systems, which is a software, or it's a software that I use to kind of analyze geographical data and kind of find patterns and come up with solutions. And then we're going to talk about one thing that I'm very passionate about, and that's remote sensing. So that's taking aerial imagery and all the results from satellites floating around the Earth, and what you could do with that information and turn it into solutions. And then at the end of it, I'll dip into missing maps, which is a great volunteer opportunity to start putting your geographic skills to test. And it's a really worthy cause, and I'll give more detail on that when we get there. So when I was asked, my coworker, Elizabeth, she kind of gave me a little bit of insight of which next generation standards would apply for me. So I have this fourth grade standard and analyze and interpret data from maps to describe patterns of the Earth's features. And then looking into these SEPs and these CCCs, I think when you get into geography, I think nearly all of these can apply, and I think a lot of these can apply too. But these are analyzing and interpreting data, and then patterns. The patterns are essential for remote sensing, geography, and all of that. So a little bit about me. I went to college at Iowa State University. I got my bachelor's degree in environmental science in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. A lot of my workload dealt with soils, geography, and environmental science impacts of sustainability and whatnot. There's a nice photo of me my former boss took. This is a stream bank stabilization project up in Carpentersville. So there I am out and inspecting it and making sure that that riprap is stable and that the the longevity of that stream bank is going to be decent. So I thought this is a great picture just to show off the Fox River. And later on in the presentation, I'll go over the importance of Fox River and the watersheds and how they're kind of important when it comes to geography. So my role at the Cane to Page SWCD is kind of split up between a couple different things. So Deb kind of mentioned the SWCDs and their how they're built up, but kind of a little bit of backgrounds. The SWCDs are a local branch of government under the Illinois Department of Agriculture, and that's how it was started. It was a kind of we're a service provider. We work with the Natural Resource Conservation Service to help farmers out to hopefully implement some conservation measures on their fields in maybe less productive areas or areas that are prone to flooding, maybe come up with conservation-minded solutions to have that watershed effect and have that positive impact on water quality. And so that kind of is depicted in this top left picture right here. Here we have a riparian buffer where the water from the fields come to, and then it ultimately discharges down the creek. So we have basic row crop like corn, a corn stand, and she's looking at what type of native options she could do in this little buffer area that would be beneficial towards habitat. And also because she really takes, the homeowner takes conservation really seriously, and she wants to implement like regenerative agriculture practices on her field. This graphic right here, I during my time at the district, as you can see in the bottom left corner, we got a new logo. So when the opportunity came up to come up with some logos, I jumped on that. So that kind of is a good representation of the GIS work that I do here. And it's what I'm trying to depict here is here's the Fox River, and then you have sediment laden water coming through, and then once it hits the effects of Cane to Page SWCD, the water comes out clear on the other end. But I'm not sure if people pick up on that too easily. So the bottom left corner, it's this is a stormwater pollution prevention plan that when a development is proposed, in order to get a permit with the regulatory authority, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency or the United States Army Corps of Engineers, they have to come up with a plan that goes with their engineering plans that accounts for keeping all pollutants from discharging off-site. So this is a plan. You could see this basin right here. All the stormwater that's going to be negatively impacted that is a result of being on this project, it's going to have to go to this basin before it ultimately discharges to Otter Creek. So one of my primary jobs is to go to these sites and make sure that they're following this plan, and also to make additional recommendations so that they could improve their plan and potentially account for any sediment-laden water that might be discharging offsite. Ultimately, we care about what is happening to Otter Creek. We want it to be so as if there was never a disturbance in construction. That's the ultimate goal. And then you see this bottom right picture here. This is what you don't want to see. This is immediately following a stormwater event where, I don't know if you've seen construction sites before, but they have typically a barrier of silt fence that will keep the soil from eroding off-site and that sediment-laden water to erode off-site. However, on this site, there was too much area of ground disturbance that it was overwhelming of this perimeter best management practice. So if this construction had more living roots in it and it had a more stabilized ground coverage, then it would have reduced the amount of sediment-laden water from discharging off-site like you see here. So that's a little bit about my role at SWCD. So if we look at geography, I love this picture by Janine Johnson on the right here. I think it gives a great depiction of what kind of the ultimate goal is of geography. So you see it's kind of layers, and I'll get into geographical information systems and how you could collect data, you can analyze data, and you could display data. But you could see that there's this clear pattern of customers, and they want to get to the reasoning for these customers, or say, I say, why are there so many McDonald's right here? Like if McDonald's is coming in and they say, okay, these are where our customers in this geographical location are, where would we want to put a McDonald's? Well, maybe they want to put 2 McDonald's. You put one right here in a centralized location, right here in a centralized location. So these customers have a quick access to go to it. And then you stack those layers on top of each other. You have the streets and the parcels, and there's always the concern with the parcels. Maybe this proposed idea for a McDonald's right here is in a parcel restricted to residential purposes. So maybe they might have to shift to over here because this is where the business park is at, or the commercial areas. And then you could see there's also stacking of phenomenons of the natural world. So elevation, that shows what the difference in how far it is from sea level. So you can see that the areas in white are the closest to sea level. They correspond with the river. And then the areas in black are higher up, higher ground. So you could see that they've been developed on so that they don't get flooded out. And then land usage kind of goes with parcels, what this zoning is. So you can see this is residential, this is commercial, and green space, water, farming. So I love this, the study of spatial distribution patterns of phenomenon over the earth. And I think that really pretty much covers it. And I'll get back to this point of spatial location. Everything has a spatial location. I'm located at a certain latitude and longitude right now that I could use as my where. So geography is kind of the study of where. So you look for why these patterns exist and see what you could do with that. So with geography, naturally comes cartography. Cartography is the science of map making. They've been making maps for a long time. When I think of maps, I think of those early expedition maps where they were kind of projecting what the world looks like in order to improve their commerce or to improve like each trip that they're going to make across. They want to have an accurate depiction of what the world looks like so they can know what to expect. So this is a phenomenal map right here. So I'm going to go into the progression of maps kind of over time. So they started off those maps that I referenced right before this is a static map. You're not getting too much action out of that map. Yeah, let's see here. Feel free to also. Okay. Oh, hello, Elizabeth and Rachel. So this map right here is called Napoleon's March to Moscow, I believe. And it's a lot wrapped into one, and that's why it's called an infographic. This is these are actual geographic locations. This is the city where Napoleon led his troops, and this is the city where they had to ultimately retreat back. And so you could see, based off of the thickness of the bolt, that this depicts how many troops are in their army as they're going along. So you can see it gets slimmer and slimmer. And that's as a result of every time they get to a major city or run into some type of obstacle, the bolt gets a little bit smaller and smaller until they're getting to Moscow. And then it was just like they had to retreat. So the black indicates how they have gotten back. And then there's also more information down here indicating the temperatures at certain times. This right here, they show significant rivers, and they had such a struggle to cross this river that they lost significant troop numbers just by crossing this path. So it's a very informative map. How long does it take to learn this software? Well, this isn't a software. This is just a map that I got from online. But how long does it take to learn the software? I would say it takes a decent amount of time, and I'll dip into the actual software itself sooner or later. Not sooner or later, sooner in the presentation. But I think there's an ease of like incorporating an informative punch in this type of map. It shows cartography over time. It has lots of variables tied into it. So as we progress through time, we have more sophisticated maps. So this is pretty much depicting the same information, but given the internet and the simplicity to do measures like this, we could turn it into a dynamic map so you can more clearly visualize what's going on. And it also helps that it has a clear English legend that kind of gives you indication. But it's just the progress of maps, and now we have dynamic maps, and we actually have kind of dynamic maps was cool for a while, but we're moving to the future with interactive web maps. And I had to give a shout out to the best interactive web map out there, and that would be Google Maps. Google Maps, I have a clip right here, but it's pretty much taking the Internet of Things and putting it onto a user-based interactive web map. So it is what you created. They make their suggestions based off of their algorithms and all that, but a full user submersion is the future of maps. And yeah, with that, I'll just talk about a couple other applications of geography and maps and science. Obviously, there's been this significant pandemic that's been going on. So there's been a lot of maps that have been coming out to show the spread of the COVID, where in proximity are these numbers taking place. And then you look at where you are in the world and where the spreading is taking place. A lot of referencing the maps. Johns Hopkins has this great database that I would recommend you take a look at that. They have the data mapped since the beginning of the pandemic, and they show a lot of great patterns and different important variables depicted on one like graphical interface. The United States Census Bureau takes information that's submitted and creates patterns based off of that. So they kind of plan based off of that spatial location as well. Obviously, there's a lot to do with geography and GPS when it comes to crime, military. A lot of like when you call 911, they need to have that GPS location in order to really help out the best they can. And then things that I'm more interested are those last two, the areas that you could set aside for conservation. I mentioned maybe depressional areas that could be converted into a conservation habitat, or you look at patterns in the field and find out, instead of doing a mass application of a fertilizer or pesticide, you do precision agriculture and you hit each plant directly, and that could potentially have significant improvements in water quality down the road. So I mentioned watersheds. So here's, not to be overwhelming, but I threw the 3 maps onto here. So these are at 3 different scales. So this is at the closest scale, this is at a farther away scale, and this is kind of midway between them. I added these 3 because everything eventually ends up downstream. So this is the Fox River watershed. Some of you might be in the Fox River watershed right now. Now I've been fortunate to live in the Fox River watershed pretty much my whole life outside of the years I've been in college. But what a watershed is that everything in this red polygon has a common drainage point. So everything will ultimately discharge out of here from here, because this is the upstream end and this is the downstream end. So if a raindrop were to fall right here, or right here, or right here, or right here, it would end up in the Fox River. And if you take kind of that approach, then it's kind of you have that the watershed is your common feature. So each person in the watershed has the watershed ID affiliated with them, and it's kind of, we're all in it together. That kind of transcends state boundaries or political boundaries. We're all in it together. So a raindrop right here is not going to end up to the Fox River. That's either going to go to one of these tributaries around here, or it's going to go straight into the Lake Michigan. So we look at this. This is a great phenomenon, but the Mississippi River watershed. So right here is a land cover map, and you could see that the yellow areas depict agriculture and the red areas depict developed. So here you go. You got Chicago, you got St. Louis, you got the corn belts, and you got so a big issue is this next graphic, which is the Gulf of Mexico, and this depicts the hypoxia of Gulf, or it's called the Gulf of Mexico hypoxia, so that pollutants are gathering in this watershed, and they're ultimately discharging off at this point and making their way into the ocean. And this shows the phytoplankton blooms that are occurring as a result of that. And that could be from various reasons. I mean, it is one of the biggest agriculture centers in the world. So there's thought that because of the fertilizer applications and different conventional agriculture methodology, that's contributing to the Gulf of Mexico hypoxia as a result. So if we really look into these areas and try to go even to a closer scale, it all starts with this. It starts with every square foot. Like, whatever you could do to improve water quality, it will ultimately help out in the end and help out with that problem that we're experiencing in the Gulf of Mexico. So you asked how long does it take to learn the software. So I'm going to talk about the software. It's called Geographical Information Systems. The proprietary software is called ArcGIS. It's mainstream. It's very user friendly. You could do a lot of it. You could do all your storage on it. You could do all your analysis and map creation on it. So when I started to learn this, I started at the Soil Water Conservation District in 2017, September 2017. And I went to the College of DuPage to enter their GIS certification program at the same time. So I was fortunate to learn this stuff every Monday evening, and then I would be applying it to my work. So it was kind of the perfect storm to learn the software really easily and to implement it in real life problems that come up in our office. So with me, I would say it took me about 6 months to get really comfortable with the software, but I was learning it at school and also applying it to work at the same time. So if we jump to the actual software, so this is the interface. I know it's intimidating and it's a lot to look at right now, but the most important things is that this is the data frame that's depicting a map that you have on display. These right here, it's the table of contents and it has layers. So you could see here that if you check this off, then one second, hopefully this doesn't shut down everything. Well, it might. There we go. So you could see that the boundaries of the county layers went away, but if you toggle that back on, then you could see it. So for this project, we're interested in, so we have a bunch of project boundaries that we use for our soil erosion and sediment control program. There are inspection project boundaries. Well, they are spread out throughout the entire county. So that's a data set that we continually add on and we improve, but you could take that data set and then you could kind of elaborate further on it. So right there, I have the municipal boundaries of Elgin. So for this project, we're interested in showing which of our project boundaries are found within the boundaries of Elgin, the municipal boundaries of Elgin. So another great thing about ArcGIS is you have these geoprocessing tools. So you could take data and you could analyze them together and to create a new data subset of it. So we're going to use this fun tool called the clip. So you're going to take this input, which is going to be our inspection project boundaries. So it's probably going to take a little for all these things to load, but you'll see the result in the end. So we're going to take all of these project boundaries, see these blues and these greens, and we're going to clip them. We only want to know these ones. So we only want to know the ones that are going to fall in that. So we can then choose Elgin as our clip feature. So we want to use that to clip the input features. So we click OK, and then that's going to load for us. We also have another option if you're, this is called the structured query language, where you could make a selection based off of the location. So so we'll actually go back to that later. So this is the new data set created. So we could zoom to that layer and we could turn off our old layer. And now we'll be able to see which of those boundaries fall specifically within Elgin as soon as this loads up right here. And so just to kind of give the tour of this too, you could choose different data sets to add in. So this is all connected to your computer. And if you wanted to add maybe a 2-foot contour line, so to show like elevation throughout the county. So the county, they took a digital elevation model, like a LiDAR data set, and they derived it so that you could bring it down to gradients that indicate 2-foot changes in the elevation. So you could add information like that, and that's a quick just click and drag and drop. But we're more interested in these projects that actually ended up in Elgin. So this is what we wanted. So we could kind of we could keep that Elgin boundary on, but the important components. So then we're going to create a map out of this. So that's a part of this software that we create the map. And so with that, we're going to add what's essential for a map. So you add the north arrow and you put that down to the side, and then maybe put like a white background. You could stylize everything in here to match what you're looking for. So you can see that clearly. And then the next component that's critical for any map is the scale bar. So we're going to add this indicating, so this distance from, so if you took your finger and you say you printed out this map and you put your finger this distance, that's going to indicate 1/4 of a mile, so that you could use it for real life applications and making sure you're more precise. That scale to the map is very important. So you add that there. And then also with all maps, you should include a legend and a title to it as well. So we could see that this map legend, we could put right here, or actually out of the way so that we could see which ones we're dealing with. So we could change the name to this. We could do Elgin Project Boundaries. We could take off the Cane du Page boundaries, and then we have right here, the background is a world street map that we could use to kind of for directional purposes. We could remove the Elgin boundary, and then that's pretty much our map right there. And then we could add a title to it, and that's kind of that. And then when I was talking about the select by location opportunity, so you do inspection project boundaries that that intersect with this. So this is going to select the data that is relevant. So with each data set, you have additional attributes that goes with them. So this project, or sorry, so you could select this one, this project right here, and you could find that it's project number 18E065, and this is the contact information and different things like that. The status is open, and you can retrieve more information based off of that spatial location. So that's a little bit of a tutorial of the actual software itself. If you're interested in learning more about that, please, I'll extend my email at the conclusion of this talk. But the next topic I want to talk about is remote sensing, one topic that I'm, when it comes to, I'll answer this question. So how is the question was, how has this technology helped change how SWCDs work? How did you have to do before you had this tech? Well, that's a good question for Elizabeth, who might be on the call, because she said that she's had to do the natural resource inventory reports without the GIS software. But I think with the software, it makes our reporting processing so easily, and it's so easy to create the maps that are a part of our report. So one of the aspects of our job is that we provide natural resource inventory data related to a zoning change. So say someone wants to convert this farm field into an industrial center. So for our report, we will look at this location, and we'll look at for any negative consequences that might take place as a result of the development. So we're interested in any surrounding wetlands, or we're surrounding in the nearby floodway that might impact the responsible development. We're all about gathering as much data that we have at our disposal and helping the applicant, the municipality, and all the planners make the most responsible decision possible. So it's helped in that aspect in our LUO report, but I also talked about how it helps in our inspection process. So we kind of put this image down, and we could use something like this out in the field, and it could show you where the locations of each inspection photo was taken. So say you took a picture right here, and there was sediment-laden water discharge taking place. Well, because you show the location where that photo was taken, once you arrive to the site, you don't have to walk around the whole site to find the place. You know where that location is. So the location is essential. And it definitely helps for conservation planning, for making sure to express your plans to the farmer in a map so they know exactly what they're getting themselves into. So GIS and agriculture are a great mix. And I think at our SWCD, we're trying to like bridge the gap of making GIS really helpful in our soil erosion sediment control inspection workflow. So before we had this tech, I think it was based off of physical maps and printouts that they have to scan and put in, if I'm not mistaken. But that's before my time. So Elizabeth had to make a copy of the aerial photo and then look at the scale of the map, use the map to draw the boundaries on the pencil, and then she thinks it's subject to a lot of errors. So don't tell those former applications. But yeah, definitely more time consuming than the luxury that we have today. So going back into remote sensing. So this is a topic that I'm really interested in. It's something, so in geography, there are vector layers. So there's points, lines, polygons, multi-polygons so you could show a line right here that you could create a feature in GIS. You could create a line right here to indicate a line or a road. But it's a combination of those vector layers and also a raster data. So this is a raster image that I retrieved from the United States Geological Service provider. They have this cool data platform called the Earth Explorer, where you could download aerial imagery and you could manipulate, you could play around with it, you could look at changes in time. But there are patterns on this map that kind of give you good indication of certain phenomenons and questions you want to get answered. So that's what I'm interested in. I'll talk about how I applied this in my capstone project at the College of DuPage. So remote sensing, here's a little bit like of science. I hope I do a good job of explaining it. So the life comes from the sun, and the sun is always sending energy towards the earth, and that energy is coming in different forms of energy or different forms of wavelength from the electromagnetic spectrum. So there's visible reflected energy that we see in the visible spectrum of it, and there are larger wavelengths that we cannot see ourselves. So remote sensing is taking spacecraft and putting additional sensors on them so that we could create more science. So one component of the electromagnetic spectrum that we cannot see is infrared emitted energy. And this gives us great indication about about vegetation, about different phenomenons. So you could take this visible light that's reflected and also this infrared light that's reflected, and you could create equations that I'm going to show you in the next slide. But it opens up this whole world of monitoring the world and looking for changes, and the applications in agriculture and science and the impact of civilization are very apparent. So one of those things that I mentioned is that the visible light and the infrared are hitting the earth and they're reflecting off into the satellites. Well, that could like I was mentioning in the agriculture benefits, that could give great indication of what tree is considered healthy and what tree is considered unhealthy. That's based off of the characteristics of the chlorophyll and also what that equation is spitting out from the results of those sensors on the satellites. Do clouds ever interfere with GIS? Yes, they do. When you go to that website, Earth Explorer, there's this satellite called the Sentinel-2, and it does flyovers pretty much every 1 or 2 weeks. So, for example, this past year, there's see this program. It's called the Saving Tomorrow's Agriculture Resources, and you pretty much talk about all your contributions towards the nutrient loss reduction strategy. And the two very important aspects of that is if you use cover crops, which is it's like a temporary coverage. It's not most of the time it's not a cash crop. So in between your traditional corn and soybean cycles, you're going to put a cover crop so that you go into the winter with a nice stabilized mat of vegetation, just like I was showing you here with the issue right here. If there was more stabilized uniform vegetational coverage, that would hold off from sediment-laden water from leaving the site. So with what I'm getting to is that sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm all over the place, but the cloud coverage. Well, one of the things for that program, we wanted to verify that farmers were putting the right things in their applications, and they would say, yes, I implemented cover crops this growing season. So we were trying to work out a methodology where we would go onto Earth Explorer and download data that you could find that would correspond really well with the cover crop coverage. So by the time that's planted to emergence, there's that tiny window at the end of the growing season going into the winter where you could see that and actually verify that they did put down a cover crop. And so we wanted to find that sweet spot in the collection of Sentinel-2 information. So a lot of the times that sweet spot would be ruined because there was cloud coverage impacting the quality of that photo. So it was pretty much useless in that pursuit. But yes, cloud coverage does impact the results of those that imagery. Another question here. The healthy and unhealthy tree has me wondering if you could use GIS to monitor a habitat restoration project. If yes, does that save field time or do you have to verify with an inspection? So it is very important to always have ground truth information so you can make this assumption or you could put the science together that leads you to an answer with classify or both supervised and unsupervised models, but you need to have that ground truth component to it to verify that your methodology is sound. And if you get to the point where you're doing enough ground truths and then you keep proving that hypothesis, then you could do it at a larger scale. But the ground truth is really important. And yes, the applications and habitat restoration is really important. If you look at down in South America, there's a big spread on the western end of the country where they're converting like a lot of pasture land into row crops. So they're putting it into corn and soybeans. So you could see areas where there's significant deforestation and changes in land cover taking place. And that's really apparent if you want to look up. There's a split shot that shows Haiti and the Dominican Republic, I believe. And you could see that one side is significantly deforested while one side has taken a different approach and they kept their forest intact. So yes, when it comes to this healthy, unhealthy vegetation, this is really critical for habitat restoration and those types of projects. Great question. So you can see here, the healthy tree is contributing more or spitting out more infrared, and it's absorbing more of the visible spectrum, and the unhealthy is doing the opposite. So you can find some patterns off of that. So thinking back on that image that I had up for the raster display. So this one right here, if you do some remote sensing work and some geoprocessing tools that are available in ArcGIS, you could find some really cool insight. So here's some different, so when you take multiple different aerial images that have multiple different bands of the electromagnetic spectrum, then you could play around with it. So this one is what we're talking about here with the unhealthy, healthy stuff. So this is taking the infrared and the visible light that's reflecting off of that. You're plugging it into an equation, and it's going to tell you where on this map the healthiest location is located, the healthiest vegetation is located. So right here, you have the deepest, thickest, greenest area. So these are area of high production, whether that be under agriculture at the time of the flights, or if it's like a forested area. So you can kind of see that this might be because it's in a high ground spot. So it's just a healthy, undisturbed patch of vegetation. And then you could see on the other side of it and is some standing water. So this is Dick Young Forest Preserve. It's got this big, beautiful wetland in there. And you can see how it really fills up during the wet months, really kind of dries out during the dry months. And that will come back as a different reflectance. And that's not going to come in green. That's going to come on the other side of that symbology. And this is going to indicate where standing water is occurring. So with that data, you could take out, say you want to look at this map and you want to, after a really wet flyover, you want to find areas that are flooded or saturated. So you're going to take this information and you're going to extract using another geoprocessing tool in here, and you're going to extract the areas that only are classified as this like kind of red color. So these would correspond with like a negative 0.75 to -1 value. And then you could turn that into a layer of standing water. So you could use that in maps to indicate all types of things if you want to do responsible development. So with my capstone project, we look at this image again, and right here we have the 100-year floodplain. So this is, if I'm not mistaken, these are areas where you have a 10% chance every year to be flooded, or it might be 1%, I forget. But these are the areas that are known to flood. So and if just from my experience of being on the job and driving around the field, I know that there's more than meets the eye than this photo. I could be driving along this street and this area could all be flooded, but it doesn't indicate that on the guaranteed floodplain layer. This floodplain layer is released by the Federal Emergency Management Association, I think, FEMA, and it gives you great information, but it's not an entirely great depiction of exactly where you're going to have flooding issues. All like when you have significant storm events. This is what's going to take place for the smaller storm events, but with the higher frequency of larger storm events kind of taking place in recent years, it's important to go beyond this layer and look for like use remote sensing to find those depressional areas where water is likely to accumulate. So I wanted to find something using a remote sensing application to go beyond this floodplain layer. So this is what the final results of my capstone project was. So you can see on the left here, it shows you where the floodplain areas are, and using a weighted overlay of a bunch of different raster calculations and including the normalized differential vegetation index, the normalized differential moisture index, and the wetness index, using those sensors from the satellite, whipping them into an equation and plugging them out, I created a flood susceptibility rating. So you can see these are the areas that are highly prone to flooding, and these are the areas that are low to prone to flooding. So you can see with that little bluish cyan color that these are high areas and these are going to remain dry. these white spots are standing water. These red spots are intermediary. And so you could kind of find patterns beyond the floodplain. So yeah, the red corresponds with the floodplain, the red right there. And so this whole area is going to be pretty much wet. This farm field's having issues, but it's not really highlighted on the 100-year floodplain. So this is where this was located. So Chicago, and this is right at the outskirts of Batavia. And yeah, that was the result of my project, and I was pretty happy with the results of it. So a takeaway assignment for this is, yeah, like I won't care if you don't do it, but I think it's a great opportunity to learn some stuff. So I joined the American Red Cross Association to get involved in this effort. It's called Missing Maps. So it's this volunteer effort to contribute towards disaster-prone areas and to map them so that they can make better decisions and know what the impact of a certain disaster had. So they need to get a baseline. So they look back in that old aerial imagery and they use people's volunteer time, that manpower, to create an accurate representation of what was there before the storm. And then they're going to bring in the flyover after the storm, and then they're going to compare the two. And that could be used for insurance purposes and to kind of give great indication of the impact of that disaster, a tornado or something. So you could, to get involved, here's a little bit of it. So you trace satellite imagery and OpenStreetMap, and then they add local details, and then it's kind of like a gathering. So in our UW-Madison American Red Cross Association, we meet every month and we get together and we do what's called a mapathon, where we all work with each other, working on a certain area. But this is the preview of what you could look at. So you can see with the little video in the background that this person is making boundaries of the homes that existed before a disaster. So like I said, they're going to come by later and they're going to use that information, and they're going to kind of determine what the impact of a disaster was. You could do more than just buildings. So this person right now is doing buildings, but you could do street layers, you could do agriculture fields, you could do wetlands, you could do a lot of different things. So it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like a little bit of a video game in my eyes. So you have the opportunity to sign up. I'm not sure about the signing up process for people not involved in the American Red Cross, but with the American Red Cross, it's a pretty simple process, and you're able to kind of track your contribution over time and help out the cause. So it's like, okay. Is this with ArcGIS? 849. No, the missing. Oh, sorry. It was the sorry, Donna. Are you asking about the missing maps, or are you asking about that before this? This was all done using ArcGIS, right? If I were to redo it again, I would probably use the open source software called QGIS, but this was done in ArcGIS. And this is all kind of based off of open source software as well. It's OpenStreetMap and aerial imagery. That's, yeah, okay, thank you. Yes, Hope is part of FEMA we could, oh yes, we could do this. So yeah, with that, I like that encouraging message. I don't know if everyone can see those Q&As, but that's an encouraging message to go with. So with that, I think that's the conclusion, about 7 minutes short here. If anybody has any questions, please let me know now. If not, you could email me. I just threw in some photos of some interesting inspections that I had over the years. I'm very passionate about both the geography aspect of this job and also the soil erosion sediment control. I'll just, until I get more questions, I'll just explain what's going on in these two pictures. So this is a new development that's taking place. These concrete trucks have to come to the construction site and they have to drop off the concrete, and whatever excess concrete that they don't use on the construction site, they're supposed to put it into a designated spot so that it could be treated and that it won't ultimately disturb surrounding habitat or get into the water and get into the storm system. So right here is what we would call a failed effort. So they're missing the treatment station and it's making its way down the street and into this unprotected storm sewer inlet. So this is either going directly to a nearby pond, and that could ruin habitat value, but it could also go into the nearby storm sewer system, and then they would have to treat that before they could ultimately release it. So that's an expensive process. It kind of so you want to avoid that. So with proper soil erosion sediment control best management practices, you would have been able to do that. And this one to the right, this kind of wraps more to geography. I think the applications of drones in soil erosion sediment control. This picture, I was fortunate to be on top of a newly placed bridge, but you could get a lot of insight from above. So right here we have the Fox River, and this is a new giant, there's a parkway that they're putting in place, but they're gonna be putting a giant basin here. So from this view, you could kind of get a good depiction of where the water is going. So right now it's being held back, but they have some pumps in here that they're taking the water and they're putting it into this habitat right here. So my job would be I see those pumps and my ears stick up or whatever that expression is. And then I go and check out that spot and make sure that sediment laden water is entering that habitat and not eventually hitting the Fox River. So that's an application of geography and soil erosion sediment control. And yeah, I suppose that's it for me.
This was so great and so informative. And I did check, you've answered all the questions, so we're good there, but I have some scientist kind of questions.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself an earth scientist or an engineer?
Earth scientist.
But you definitely deal with a lot of engineering. Like you have to be able to read maps and you have to be able to do all those things to make recommendations. Sorry about my little helper over here.
Yeah, I can't get that PE, so I can't be a PE, so I'm an earth scientist.
But I love that. But you still get to, you're still using those skills with engineering, which I think is it's amazing to do all that problem solving. And so I have a question about those CCCs that you mentioned earlier. Yes. Sorry, everyone. I think you do a lot of studying in systems and system models. I think that you do a lot with stability and change and cause and effect. But, I'm a life scientist and I see that you do a lot also though with structure and function. So I'm looking at these two pictures.
Yeah.
How in a physical science world or an earth science world, how do you also deal with structure and function?
Structure and function.
Yes. So like as a life scientist, I look at how DNA is made up. And then I tell people how it functions. And I'm looking at these two pictures and really your structure and function too, because you have to look at how things are put in place.
Yeah, I have to kind of interpret what I'm looking at in order to give you the overall picture. And that's kind of what we do when we go to a construction site for a pre-construction meeting. This is what we're here for. We're going to be looking at the impact of this river. Whatever takes place up here, do what you have to. We have some standards in place from the Illinois Urban Manual that you could follow to ensure that you have the best practices possible. But big picture is what's the impact of that on that river. So right here, they're removing that water and it's not being the most effectively removed and treated before it's hitting that water. So as a system, the system isn't working.
It's really fun when you really think about how scientists function, and you're Patrick. I know that this is like every scientist that we've worked with, that we've kind of asked these things to, everyone goes, and then we really, because it's so natural to us. And so these are the things that we're trying to develop in tools to create that pipeline. So it's so exciting. I do want to make one more point. Because I love the Soil and Water Conservation District offices.
Oh, who doesn't?
Are so, they're just, people don't understand them. But I want to make sure we cover one thing. You are a government body. Mm-hmm. Are you regulatory or are you advisory?
I would say the latter. So we work on behalf of the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. They release permits both for individual construction projects and also municipal boundaries. Municipalities have a responsibility to make sure that every construction project that's taking place within their boundary fits the standards of their permit. So we have agreements with a couple municipalities that we watch over them and make sure that the projects that are taking place within their boundaries are abiding by their permit. So we also have an inspection program with the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, where we go to those isolated construction projects and we make sure that we gather the information, we interpret what's out on the field, and we report back to the regulatory authority, which would be the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency and also the Army Corps of Engineers. So for this project to the right, this is obviously the Fox River is considered a waters of the United States, is a navigable water. That one's not really too gray, but given the impact and if they're doing any cut or fill, that our involvement is going to be needed, and they have criteria that they have to follow in order to get that permit from the Army Corps of Engineers. And so we are the boots and the eyes and the ears for the Army Corps out in the field.
So literally, there's that saying, and people always are flippant about it. Like, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help you, right? I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. Literally, all our soil and water conservation districts in every county across the United States, literally, you guys are here to help and to help people. If I'm an individual homeowner, or I am somebody who wants to, I'm going to purchase a home in your county. Yeah. Anything you guys can offer me to help. So, people do their due diligence with their finances and those kinds of things, but is there a way you guys can help people with due diligence if I'm going to buy a home?
Well, we get calls into the office, and then maybe we'll refer them to great resources like an online interactive web map, like the Kane County GIS or the DuPage County GIS. And there's an abundance of information in there that you can make a responsible choice before you buy a home. You could toggle on that floodplain layer and know if you're going to be buying a home that's in an area prone to flooding. And if you go to like Realtor, we don't go and recommend going to realtor.com, but you go into there and you could see that floodplain. You can also see the quality of the schools and stuff like that. So there's a lot that you could get from an interactive web map that we would like reference you to. We would encourage you to join or consider reaching out to your watershed committee. So figure out which sub watershed group you're in. So if you're in Elgin, chances are you're in Tyler or Jelkes or whatever. But you can reach out to them, and you have these people that are gathered together with various backgrounds, and they have a lot of insight of what's gone on over the years in the watershed, and they would definitely be able to help you in any responsible decision that you're going to make. So people can ask us if they're deciding to buy a large piece of property, maybe a former ag field, then we can refer them to this tool called the Web Soil Survey that's released by the Natural Resource Conservation Service. So you could get a lot of insight on the characteristics of your soils, building site development suitabilities, hydric soils, and also what are you losing if you take that out of production and stuff like that.
So thank you so much. That was really informative. And my guess is a lot of people got informed about a government, a body of government that they maybe weren't aware of before. And so I'm a fan. I guess I should do full disclosure. I was a director of a soil and water conservation district in Cook County for a long time. So soil and water conservation districts are near and dear to my heart, but very important. And you were very informative, and I really appreciate you today.
Thank you. I know I was a little all over the place, but
you were not all over the place. You were fine. There was great information, and also you gave a lot of fourth grade teachers a great place to start. So
excellent. Yes, please. We discussed that GIS curriculum if they want to reach out. We can get them all.
I might actually contact you for a training because I know we have access to that free source, and we have a lot of teachers that want to use it and don't necessarily know how to. So I'm thinking that might be a great PD, and maybe some teachers, and if they want to contact me, we could set that up and then let you know when that might happen. So
yeah, we could get a lot done in an hour.
Yes. We can, for sure. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Have a really wonderful rest of your day. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see